Amud Beis. And a little more than halfway down the page. First one line is the Esha, right in the middle of the line, Amr of Chariva. About halfway through the wide lines.
All right, gotcha.
Okay. Amr of Chariva. Ishtoili of Chariva bar Surmaki. I've heard the story of Chariva Surmaki Chazle Ahum Rabbanon. He saw one of the rabbis to have a shchiach Eliyahu Gabei, that Eliyahu Navi would visit him. The Tzafar have a Shapir and Eini. In the morning, his eyes were beautiful. Ula Orta in the evening, Dami Kid Mikalan Benura. It looked like they were burnt by fire. Amri Leis said to him, "My hi, what's going on?" Amri said, "Amri Eliyahu Achvi LeRabbanon Kisaki L'Msifet Rakia." He said, "I told Eliyahu Navi I want to see the rabbis as they die and they go up to the study hall of heaven." Amar Li, so he said to me, "Bekulu matzlis tekula behula barami goharkan Rav to learn stakelbei." He said, "You can look at all the rabbis, but don't look at Rav Chia." Ma'isiminayo, how do you know which one's Rav Chia? So bekulu azim alachi kisalki v'nachti lebarami goharkan Rav Chia diminafshei salak. Everybody else is accompanied by angels, except for Rav Chia, he goes up by himself. I was not able to control myself. It's takliba, and I looked at Rav Chia. Also, Trey Betiti Denura, Umachyu, and two bolts of fire came out and blinded me. Lahu Gavr to this person. And he became blind. Lamacha the next morning, Azli Ishtatchi Ama'arta. I went to the cave where Rav Chia was buried. Amina Masnisa Demar Masnisa Ve'itzi. And I told him that I've studied your Torah, and therefore you should heal me. Ve'itzi, and he was healed. Eliyahu have a shchiach mesifta de Rebbe. Eliyahu Hanavi would frequent the study hall of Rebbe. Yom Echad Reish Yar Kahava Nagale V'Lo also. One day was Rosh Chodesh, and Eliyahu Hanavi came late. Amar Lei, so Rebbe said to Eliyahu Hanavi, "My time Nagale Lamar. Why are you delayed?" Amar Lei Adu Kimnel Avram Umashtina Yada. I had to wake Avram Avinu and wash his hands, Umatzli and daven with him, Umagnina Lei, and then lay him down. V'chen Yitzchak V'chen Yaakov. And so did Yitzchak and so did Yaakov. So it took me more time to wake them up on Rosh Chodesh. So that's why I'm late. So he said to him, he said, "Why are you waking them up separately? Why don't you all wake them up? Why don't you wake them up at the same time?" So Yodav, he said to him, "Savri tekifi barachmi, u'ma'isle Mashiach." If they all daven at the same time, the prayers will be too powerful and they'll bring the Mashiach. But Laizimni, not in its correct time. Amrulay, so he said, so Rebbe says to Yonavi, the Yesh Dugmas of Elam Hazeh, is there anybody whose prayer can bring Mashiach in this world? Amrulay said, yes, there is. Ikar Rav Chia Ubanov. If Rav Chia and his sons daven for Mashiach, then the Mashiach would come. So goes Rabbi Tanisa. So Rebbe tried to organize this by decreeing a fast day. Achtinu Rav Chia Ubanov, and he had Rav Chia and his sons lead the prayers. So they started repeating Shemona Esrei, and they get to the part that said Masha Ruach, and V'nash Vazika, the wind started blowing. Amar Merid Hayeshem, they said the rain should fall. V'asa Mitra, and the rain started falling. Kimot L'Meimer Mechayim Mesim, when they got up to the point where they were going to say that God revivifies the dead. Rogash Alma, the world shook. Amri Berachia Man Goli Razia Ba'alma. In the heavens they said, who revealed the secret that if Rav Chia and his sons pray together, they can bring Mashiach. Amri, so they said Eliyahu Hanavi. It was Eliyahu the prophet. Asiul Eliyahu Machiu Shitin Puls Denure. So they summoned Eliyahu to the heavenly court and they hit him with a fiery whip 60 times. So what has? And they told him he has to stop it. So also Idmile Keduva Denura. He went back down to the study hall. This obviously happened very quickly. And he appeared to them as a beer of fire. All Benaya Vitardinu. And Rav Chia's kids were distracted by this fiery beer, and they stopped saying, and they weren't able to concentrate, and they were not able to bring Mashiach. Shmuel Yarchino, Asi the Rebbe Hava. Shmuel Yarchino was the healer of Rebbe. Havachol Rebbe Be'ene. So Rebbe had his eye was hurting him. He says, make me a medicine. The doctor says, Shmuel Archino says, Lo Yechelna, I can't. Ishtadlcha Mishter, make me a cream. Amalei Lo Yechelna, I can't either. Have a Maisavle Begufsa the Salmone Tuse Beisadya Veitzi. He put the medicines, the herbs, underneath his pillow. He laid on it and it was healed. 1 second. Yeah, and this way, the so to speak, the strength of the medication was weakened by putting it under the pillow, but it was sufficient to heal him for his eyes to no longer hurt. Have come and star Rebbe l'mismechi. Rebbe tried to give him smicha to make him a rabbi. V'lo have Messiah Milsa, it never worked out. Amarlei, so one day they were talking, so Rebbe mentions the fact that he's been trying to give him smicha, but for whatever reason it never worked out. So Amarlei, so Shmuel Archino said, Lo l'star mara. Don't worry about it. Don't be in pain. I saw the book of Adam Rishon, and in the book it was written, Shmuel Archino chacham iskari. This doctor, Shmuel Archino, will be called a wise man, the Rebbe lo iskari, but he won't be called a rabbi. The Atzad Rebbe al yod tehei, and he'll have the ability to heal Rebbe. It's a very interesting Gemara here. Rebbe v'Reb Nosson Seif Mishnah. Rebbe and Reb Nosson conclude the period of the Mishnayos. Meaning the content of study was basically ended at the end of the period of Rebbe. Rav Ashi v'Ravina Seif Hara. Rav Ashi and Ravina end the period of the Gemara. Meaning the critical questions and answers were all asked before Rav Ami and Rav Ashi.
Which means that this piece of text was put in by Rabbanan Svarai.
Rav Ashi and Ravina are the conclusion of it's the end of the discussion of the back and forth of the process. Doesn't mean it was put in my could be. Halachically, this is significant as this gives a significance to the Talmud Bava. And yeah, Rabbanan Svarai did write portions of Talmuds, including parts of Pesachim as well. The simonach and an indication that this is the case is ad ovei el mikdashi ad ovei el mikdashi kel avina lachrisam. A sort of allusion to this is that mikdashi has the words of Rav Ashi, and avina lachrisam, to understand the conclusion. Avina is very similar to the words of Ravina. Amar Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana says, "Ishtoyli Rav Chama bar Barti dechosa." Rav Chama, they changed the text of here. Rav Chama, the grandson of the grandson, the great grandson, the son of the daughter of Chama, and Rabbi Bar Nachmani. He said over the following story about Rabbi Bar Nachmani, who was Agav Shimda Noch Nafshe, because he was pursued by the king. He ended up dying. He ended up passing on. What was the story? There was a tattletailer that came to him. Amar ikachad gavra b'yudoi to come evatel tracer alfi gavra Yisrael yarcha b'kaitav yarcha b'sisu. Mikarga de Malka. He said there's somebody who's distracting 12,000 Jews 1 month a year, 1 month in the winter, 1 month in the 1 month in the fall, 1 month in the spring, from the king's taxes. Now the reference here was because he would have they would study before Sukkot and Pesach, they'd study the laws of the holiday. And by them spending more time studying, there was a less of a regard for the king's taxes. So the fellow was complaining that
they became exempt.
So
during those months they would be exempt because they were scholars.
So that's one interpretation. That would be the halachic interpretation. I think Rashi doesn't actually go with that. I think the point you're making is correct. According to the Talmud, a scholar would be exempt from taxes. And that's the Gemara in Bava Kamma, toward the end of Bava Kamma. But I think that Rashi goes to a different interpretation. Yeah. Rashi does not say that. Rashi says, as a practical matter, they weren't around, and therefore made it more difficult for the king to collect his taxes. Shadrup was stuck in the Malkabas race. They sent a marshal to go after him and bring him to justice. He couldn't find him. What happened? This is Rabbi Nachmani was running around. He ran from Arak. He ran from Pedisa to Ekra. He went from Pedisa to Ekra to Agma, from Ekra to Agma, Agma l'Shchin, Shchin l'Tzrifa, Mitzrifa l'Eina Demayim, Okay. Until he finally ends up back in Pumbedisa. In Pumbedisa, he found him. What happened? The king's marshal ended up in the same hotel as Rabbah. Now, what happened was the people in the hotel, they saw the king's marshal was there. So to honor him, they gave him 2 cups to drink. Now, there's a concept here called zugais, without going into too much detail here. But basically, there are demons that attack people that eat things in pairs. So they gave him krivutaka kamei vashkiu trekis kasi. They gave him 2 cups to drink. Vidalyu lataka mikamei. And then they took the cups away from him. Hadar partzufe la'achure. And his face sort of drained from its color. He became ill. These demons attacked him.
Taka is table, isn't it?
Taka's a table, could be.
I remember correctly.
Up here. Okay. So it's table. A tray. Taka's a tray.
Yeah, well, because how did they serve? You lay on a couch. They brought a 3-legged tray that they put down by you. So taka is a small table on which your food is presented, and they took away the whole table at the end of the meal.
Okay. So they said to the people in the hotel said to Rabbi Menachmeni, what exactly can we do to how do we sort of solve the problem? We don't want the king's marshal to come to our hotel and to become ill. So Amar Lahu, so Rabbi Nachmani said to them, go give him only 1 cup to drink. And take the tray away from him. And he'll be healed. So they did that for him, and he got healed. So he picked up on the matter. He says the person who I'm looking for must be in this hotel, and that's how he saved you from my anger. He looked after him, and found him. He said to him, he felt bad arresting Rabbi Nachmani. He said to him, you can leave. I can tell you that if they kill me, I won't tell them, where I found you. However, but if they torture me, if they torture me, then I will reveal to you your spot. So basically, what they do, they brought Rabbi Nachmani to the marshal. Adruna, they put them into a chamber of Vitarki above and they locked the door. Rabbi Nachmani prayed for mercy. Porak Ashisa Orak Va'ozal Agma. The door fell down. He ran out and he ran to the town of Agma. Yosef Agirda the Kula. He was sitting on a chopped down palm tree. The Kagaris, and he was studying Torah. Okay, so interesting. So at that moment that he was sat down on this tree to study Torah, there was a major debate happening in the heavenly study hall. In the laws of Nigam, it's critical that the color of the flesh come before the white hairs. If the white hair comes before the color, the discoloring of the flesh, then it's tahor. What happens if it's a suffix, if it's a doubt? Sakadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Sakadosh Baruch Hu says tahor. The person is tahor. The Kulam Masifta Rakia Amri Tomei, and the entire heavenly court said the person's tummy. This has to do with the laws of suffix as it pertains to the laws of Nigam. Without going into too much detail there. So they said, who be good to ask? So they said, let's go get Rabbi Nachmani. And you can imagine if Rabbi Nachmani is being asked to testify in the heavenly court, it's not a good sign. Okay. The Rabbi Nachmani, because Rabbi Nachmani said, I'm the only one who truly understands the laws of Nigam and Olas. Okay, so Shadru Shlicha Basreis. They send a messenger to go collect him and bring him up there. So the angel of death, who was given the task of killing him, was not able to come close to him. Because he would not stop Torah study. And as it's brought many times in Talmud, including specifically David HaMelech, but also others, I believe it was Rabbi Yehudah, It was a similar version of the story happened with Rabbi Yehudah Anasi, and I believe as well with either Rav or Rav Chia. Basically, when there was a tremendous amount of Torah study or prayer, there was no way for the angel of death to take them in that moment. So Adahachi, to be able to take him, Nashav Zika of Avish B'nei Kini, he blew a strong wind, which rustled all the branches, and Rabbi Nachmani thought Kasavar Gunja the Parshihu. He said that there must be a troop of Persian soldiers that are here to collect me, here to cavalry, here to what do you call it? To capture me. So Amar, he said, better that I should die by the angel of death than I be handed over to the king's men. When he passed away, Amar, he said Tahar, Yotzabask. In other words, he said that the debate between God and the heavenly court, God was correct in saying that it's Tahar. Yotzabasko, a heavenly voice rang out for Amar Ashrecha Rabbi Nachmani Shigufa Tahar Yotza Nishmasach B'Tahar, that your body is pure and your soul left with the word pure on your mouth. Now, the problem was here that Rabbi Nachmani passed away on a cut down palm tree somewhere. Nobody knew where. So Naval Pitka Merakia B'Pumbedisa, a letter dropped from the sky in Pumbedisa, in the study hall, and it said on it, Rabbi Nachmani Nisvakish B'Shiva Shamalo. Rabbi Nachmani is being summoned to the heavenly courts. That was a clear message that he was killed. His life was taken. Nafka Abai Rava, the Kula Rabbanon, Liasuke Bey. So the Abai and Rava and all the rabbis came out to try to figure out, and take care of him, to bury him. They did not know where he was buried. Azul Agma. So they went to the town of Agma.
Agma isn't the town. Agma means
Agma could mean a
field,
a swamp. However, in this case, it seems to me that Agma here means a town. There is a place called Ekra de Agma. That's a place that's brought down in the Gemara in Gittin as well. I'm sorry, it would be in the end of Kedushin. Right.
Okay.
And
I stand corrected.
And I think it's also brought down actually in either Ksubis or Gittin as well. The town of Ekra de Agma. Okay. I'm not saying that Agma could be in a swamp, but in the context here of the cities, it sounds much more that he went to a city as opposed to just going to a swamp.
Okay. I hear it.
Okay. They went to Agma. They saw that it was a bunch of birds that spread out their wings and they were hovering over his body, so to sort of put it in the shade so it shouldn't rot as quickly. Amri, they said, who it must be that this is where he is, his body flying. Obviously, in other words, they were able to see the birds from a distance because they were hovering in the sky, and they went there and they found the body. That's where he is. They eulogized him for 3 days. On 3 nights. Nafal Pitka, and a letter came down from heaven. It said, whoever stops mourning this great rabbi should be excommunicated. So they didn't stop. And Saftu Shiva Yomi, they eulogized him an additional, I believe it was an additional 4 days. So it would be a full 7 days. Nafal Pitka, a letter came down and said, you can go to your houses in peace. You've mourned a great rabbi correctly. The day that Rabbi Nachmani died, Dalia Zafa, a wind blew. Vidori Lahutaya, it picked up this Bedouin, this nomad, an Arab fellow. He Rachav Gamlo while he was riding a camel. Mehagisa the Nahar Papa Vachadi Bahakisa. It picked him up from one riverbank, and the wind was so strong it dropped him off on the other side. Amar, so the nomad said, "My high, what's going on here?" So Amrila, why is the wind blowing with such ferocity? So Amrila, so they said to him, Nach nafshid Rabbi Nachmani passed away. Amr Lafanov, so the nomad said, Rabbana Shalom, Master of the universe, Kula Amadi Dachum, the entire world is yours. Rabbi Nachmani Didachat, and you belong to Rabbi Nachmani. Like we said, Rabbi Nachmani sort of supported the argument of God. At the Rabbi of Rabbi Didach, you are to Rabbi, and Rabbi is to you. Fine, so you have Rabbi now. Why are you destroying the world? Nach Zafal, so therefore the wind stopped blowing. Meaning the sort of ferocious tempest that came stopped. Rav Shimon Chalafto. Okay, now to conclude this long segment of Gemara in which we involved several people that were of extraordinary large size, the Gemara concludes the story with another person who was very large. Rav Shimon ben Chalafta Bal Basar Hava. Rav Shimon ben Chalafta was a man of great, very large person. Yom Echad, one day, he was very hot. He sat on a mountain boulder to cool down. He said to his daughter, "Biti hanifa lai b'menifa, sort of fan me with a sort of fan. And I'll give you a basket, a measurement of herbs. Nard is spike nard. At that moment, the wind picked up and started blowing. It's a strong wind. To the owner of this wind, there should be many, many baskets of herbs. There's his way of thanking God for cooling him down when he was very, very hot. Okay, now we get back to the subject of this parak after a long detour. Subject of the parak again is, like we explained, really toward the, as we proceed to the end of the Masechta, really discusses tradesmen changing their mind and shifting toward the responsibility of shomrim, of watchmen, in all the categories of shomrim. However, once we started talking about umnim, that are tradesmen, so now we transition to payalim, talk about the responsibilities to a day labor, and then we get back in the next parak and further prakim to the laws of pertaining to shomrim. So payalim, what was the first law we saw about payalim? Was how to feed them. How much do you have to feed them? So the Mishnah said, basically to summarize, the Mishnah says, "Hakol k'minhag Medina." It follows the custom of the land. So Gemara says, "Hakol atziyimai." What's the addition? Hakol, everything is like the minhag. What exactly is that a reference to? So Gemara says as follows: "Asui ba'asvet and higi mikrach rifta umishta an paka." Okay, so now the exact version of this Gemara, I'm going here with the second version of Tosfos on the bottom left. What's going on here? So the custom of that town is to break bread and to drink an anpik is a measurement of water, or potentially of wine. But the custom here was to drink the bread, was to eat the bread and drink the wine in the owner's house, in the employer's house. And therefore, the Amrle Kadimu v'Aisilahu, if he says, start work, it's gonna take me a few minutes to prepare breakfast. So why don't you get on with your job of slicing grain, cutting down the grain, while I prepare breakfast in my house, and I'll bring the food out to you in the field. Amrlahu, no, Kadimu v'Aisilahu, Amri, the Amrlu Kadimu v'Aisilahu, Amrloi Lav Kol Kaminach. They can tell him, no, we're going to wait here until you prepare the breakfast, and then we'll eat breakfast, and then we'll go out in your house, and then we'll go out in the field, because that is the custom of the town. Okay, this does not pertain specifically to the quantity of food or the requirements of the food. It's much more of the organization of how people eat, and therefore that's what's included in the Mishnah that isn't specifically mentioned, that wouldn't be specifically derived.
In other words, in those places where it's customary to provide a dining room for your employees, you can't say eat at your desk.
So that's a very good question, because now you're splitting what the two. Tosfos puts 2 points here. So the question now, what if you have only 1 point? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, because over here the Gemara points out this, according to Tosfos' version, the second version of Tosfos, there's 2 specific points. Number 1 is that you're changing the schedule, and number 2 is that you're having them eat outside. What happens if you only did one of them? I don't know about that. I'm not sure if it's a requirement, because again, it doesn't directly come into the Mishnah, because you're not changing the requirements of the foods. You're just changing the way the food is delivered. Do you have to change it 2 ways, or do you have to change it only 1 way? I don't know the answer. Okay. Bottom 2 lines. Okay. The Mishnah says basically what's the normal amount to give? It's whatever is normal. Okay. Now the Mishnah has a story that seems to contradict this, because the Mishnah story of Rabbi Yehudah and Masya, he tells his son, go hire workers. His son says, by the way, food is included. So he said food is included. That means you have to give more food than Shlomo HaMelech gave to his what's the word here? They were 4 drafted workers, is probably the best way to say it. The tax in that time was that you were drafted for work, sort of like a national service. So you have to give them a tremendous amount of food. So he said, go change it before they start working. Now, one second, why did he have to change it? The Mishnah says you do what's normal. What's certainly not normal is to give as much food as Shlomo HaMelech gave to his drafted workers. So the story seems to contradict the Mishnah. So Gemara says Ma'aseh, the story is contradictory. So Gemara says the Mishnah is missing words. This is what the Mishnah means to say. When Patsik Lahem Mizainis, if they agreed on food, Ribalahen. Okay, meaning food is automatically included. Why is food automatically included? Because obviously, if you hire workers and the standard is that you feed the workers, then of course you have to feed them. So Rabbi Yehudah was saying, the Mishnah is explaining now, according to the missing words, that if you specifically added food when food is already included, well, then you have to add an enormous amount of food. We'll see how much soon, but more food than Shlomo HaMelech prepared for his workers. Umay Sanami, and similarly, we have the story where Rabbi Yochanan Masya told his son, "Say go hire workers." And even though it was normal to give them food, he specifically mentioned food, and that was the problem. Then he went to his father, even if you make a suda as great as Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, in the time when he had these massive troops of workers. Excuse me. You have not fulfilled your obligation, Imam. Because these are the children of Avram and Yaakov, and we'll explain in a moment. Okay, we'll explain right now. In other words, the indication here is the meal made by Avram Avinu. Remember, Avram Avinu, when he had his bris milah, right, he has the three people that come to visit him, Parshas Lech Lecha. I'm sorry, Parshas Vayera. Vayera, I'm sorry. Vayera, and they come to visit him, and Avram Avinu cooks at least one large animal. We'll get to it in more detail soon. At least one large animal for three people. We'll soon see. It was actually three animals. Okay. So Gemara says, "Adifim Shlomo." You should look at Shlomo's meal; it was enormous. But he lechem Shlomo yom echad for one day. Shloshim kor, 30 kor. Silas, Vashishim Kor Kamach, another 60 core of more coarse bread. Asara Bakar, 10 animals, Briam, Vasara Bakar Rei, and 10 weaker animals, Umayat Tzayin, and 100 sheep, Labar, Me'al, V'tzvi, V'yachmar, Ubarburim, and birds, Avusim that were fanned. V'ara Gurion ben Astia, and so you have this enormous quantity of food going through every day. And Gurion ben Astia explained, Mishmei Rav, in the name of Rav, Halalu La'amelon Shal Tabachim. This was basically what they would do is they would cover the pots with a sort of dough to absorb some of the steam coming off the pots of soup, and these quantities of stuff was just to absorb the stuff in the soup.
This is not the food. This is the what surrounds the preparation.
Yeah. Rabbi Yitzchak says, "Halol tziki kedera." This was for a specific one dish called tziki kedera. Was all this food was just for tziki kedera, one dish. For Rabbi Yitzchak says, "El nashim hayil shlomo." There were Shlomo Melech had 1,000 wives. Kol achas v'achas asalo b'beisa kach. Each one of them prepared in their house. I guess, but their maid servants and stuff. They had, these were princesses or queens, and each one made this amount. My time of why was this? Each one thought that he would come to them that day. So they all prepare these enormous meals. And with regard to Avram, it says to the animal Avram ran. He took we'll soon explain these words. Ben bakar. This Ben bakar is a loose word, often used. It means an animal. Rach, a soft one. V'toiv, a good one. Rabbi Yehudah Amarav, Ben Bakar Echad, Rach Shnayim, V'Tayv Shloisha. So there were three animals. Each adjective here is describing another animal. So Gemara says, Hasan Tilsa Ture, L'Tilsa Gavra, Hachal L'Kol Yisrael. The distinction here is that Avram Avinu had three people come visit him, and each one of them got a whole animal. We'll soon see why he had to a whole animal. We'll get to that. But by Shlomo HaMelech, they had this enormous quantity, but it didn't go to one person. It went to all the Jewish people or all the workers that were drafted in that period. There was an enormous amount of Jews at the time. My barburim avusim. What does it mean? stuffed birds. This is what we today. It's what this is done to create a dish called foie gras, which is stuffed goose or stuffed duck. Yeah. There are four
banned in many countries.
Shmuel says shavusim v'ayim they sort of force feed themselves. They gorge themselves, which is also natural. The reason why geese and ducks can be force fed is because naturally they're in the period of the year where they force feed them. They gorge themselves. For Rabbi Yochanan says Mivim Torah mimar isai b'deloy anas. It's basically what we call veal, which is an animal that hasn't worked. Or tarnagala me'ashbasa b'loy anisa. And birds from the chicken coop that also have not walked around too much. Amar Rav Yochanan says, Mufkar behemis. Sure, the best of the animals, the best tasting meat is that of an ox. Mufkar shebe'oifes tarnagolos. The best of the birds is a chicken. Amar Amemar. Amemar says, Zakto zagosa uchmasa. That is a black chicken. Bat nisa, that has a large stomach. This is the second version of Rashi. The mishtaka beni atzri. One second. Okay, beni atzuri, that is eating. They would eat the peels from the grapes. They would hang around the presses. The Delimatia pasia kanya, because they're so fat, they have difficulty walking. Have difficulty walking over something. Over reeds. They can't. They sort of don't have the ability to pick themselves up.
Step over the reeds.
Right. Okay, so then these. In other words, according to him, these are the birds that Shlomo HaMelech would slaughter. Avram ran to the animal. Omer of Yehudah Marav, like we explained. Ben Bakar Echad Rach Shnayim the Toiv Sholosh Ve'em Echad. Maybe it's just one animal that happened to have been soft and good. That it's soft and good. It should be soft good. My vid toiv, and also good. Also means also another animal. Meaning it's to teach you that it was an additional animal. A tray, maybe it's only two animals. The Gemara says, once we have the extra word of toiv, we say that rach is also an extra word, and we understand that there were three animals. Masiv Rav Bar Ulav, V'temer of Haishya, V'temer of Nasim Bar Haishya, V'yitin al anar, V'yamar las saisai. He gave to his servant, and he was quick to prepare the food. So the Gemara says, Kol chad v'chad yavel anar. I'm sorry. One second. I'm sorry. Did he give all of it to one person? One second. So in other words, he gave it all to one person to prepare, and then it says the child brought out, the youth brought out chem v'chalav uben habakar. It only says one animal. What happened to the other animals? Why isn't it plural? The Gemara says the Kamma dematia asi lekamayu. As he prepared each animal, he brought that animal in front of them to give them to eat. So Gemara says v'lamali tilsa. Why did he need to give three animals, three full oxen or cattle to three people? Hiski b'chad, one would be sufficient. Amar of Chan, and now one would be more than sufficient. Amar of Chan Barova k'dei lachin shalosh l'shoynes b'chardel. He wanted to give them a princely dish, which is the tongue. Of course, one tongue to one person, and therefore, it was necessary to have three tongues, one for each person.
These are guys that don't eat.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Amar of Tanachim Bar Chaniloi lo'elam ha'yishana adam min ha'minig. A person should not change from the custom of the local custom. Moshe went up to heaven to get the Torah. He didn't eat because he was amongst the angels that don't eat. The angels came to this world, and they ate bread. They actually ate. They didn't have the capacity for eating. It doesn't mean that they actually ate. Gemara says no. They engaged in actions that made it appear as if they were eating. Okay, let's stop here. Okay, we'll continue this tomorrow. We'll continue this discussion of the story of Avraham Avinu with the 3 Arab visitors.